Hello. Didn't see you there. Let's hide the knife again. This is Tyler with Everyday EDC, and today we have a review of the Spyderco Canis. So, the Spyderco Canis. I like calling it Canis. I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Canis. This thing is, the reason I was going all kung fu-y on it, is supposed to be a self-defense knife. See, I'm even holding it wrong. I told the story before. I don't even think of a knife as a self-defense tool. You guys are going to make fun of me. It's a tool to me. I don't look at it as a weapon, but I obviously see how most people will. But now that we're done cutting through that was probably stupid to cut through that thing. That thing had some polishing compound and stuff on it. Dumb. Anyways, Spyderco Canis. So this thing, we'll start off with the scales. The scales come out in G10 laminated with carbon fiber or G10 laminate. I hated them out of the box. They kind of felt like a thick cardboard to me, and I kind of still feel the same way, but it's growing on me slightly. One thing I'm going to start doing in my reviews, which I didn't do in the last one, which is my 8015, is at the end I'm going to tell you, is this a forever knife for me or not, at least in the moment. The 8015 is a forever knife. I'll get to this in the end. We're going to start doing that at the end as well. So there's your scales. It has the compression lock, which it's breaking in super nice. No blade play up and down, left and right, and blade centering, damn near perfect. So here, you can do the compression lock flip, the Spidey flick, or the thumb flip, Spidey flick, slow, it's coming out, look, slow roll, and it works great. We talked about the scales, we talked about the just self notes, I lost track of what I'm doing. Let's talk about the ergonomics. The ergonomics of this guy are good. Now, in my opinion, I think these ergonomics are overrated. I've seen so many people say, oh, this thing has the best ergonomics in the world. It feels so good. I don't think it feels that good. I think it feels good, but let's compare it to the Manix 2. Hell no. This thing is great. Let's compare it to this PM3. Great. Let's compare it to the Shaman. Fantastic. This thing is not on par with those, in my opinion. I don't think the ergonomics are as good. If those have a rating of 9 to 9.5 ergonomically, this is sitting at a solid 8. It's just not as good as those, even though we see it touted everywhere as awesome ergonomics. Now, maybe in the reverse grip, these ergonomics feel okay, but I'm never going to cut anything like this. If somebody comes at me and they're like swinging like a whip and like knives and swords at me, I'm not going to think to bring out my Spyderco Canis and be like, ready, fight! No, that doesn't go through my mind. So ergonomics, they're okay. I would give them great ergonomics if it wasn't touted so highly in the community as like fantastic ergonomics. I just think it's overrated and it kind of toned it down for me. So this blade is a really, really aggressive Wharncliffe style blade, coming down real pointy for that Wharncliffe with this nice thin hollow grind going on right here, making this thing just stupid slicey, as you can see what it did with that freaking wood. Just slicey as all heck. Then this blade shape has this cool little cutout here. For aesthetics, this cutout looks cool. For function, it works as a weight relieving cutout, but still allowing the maximum width of the spine to go all the way to the tip of the blade, which is appreciated, being that this is a self-defense knife. You don't want to snap off your tip or anything like that. But you know, everybody talks about that, but I don't feel like the tip is that much more robust. Here's your swordfish. I just don't feel like the tip is that much more robust. Yeah, more of it is robust, but when you get down to the last quarter of an inch, it's about the same. So, you know, take that for what you will. I know that even Blade HQ and everything over there says that, but whatever. Speaking of Blade HQ, this is coming in at $192 on Blade HQ. The designer is Kelly McCann, who's a very, very, very prominent self-defense expert. I don't know if it's just with knives. I don't know much about the guy, but he's the one that designed this knife. This knife is manufactured in Taiwan. Along with the compression lock, it comes with phosphor bronze washers, which feels great. I mean, with the compression lock like this, it's pretty much dropped shut. So no complaints on the action. I mean, it's a pretty fidgety knife. The pocket clip, not deep carry, but it is ambidextrous tip up or tip down carry, which is super nice. These liners are recessed and milled and I don't know that I have anything that I can show you the milling on it. It's tiny little holes. There's like a dime size hole here, a dime size hole here, a dime size hole here, and a dime size hole here on all the scales either side. This is a CPM S30V blade, so it's going to be, say, slightly more chippy than S35, but also much more edge retentive. In theory, S35 has better corrosion resistance. Upon looking at the chemistry alone, it's very, very similar, but, you know, go ahead and jump on me for everybody who knows a lot more than me when it comes to knife chemistries. But just looking at the pure chemistry, there's not a whole significant amount of difference until you start to get into the carbide formations and everything, which we're not going into. The Spidey hole is comfortable to flick, and we have this thumb ramp with jimping both on the scales and the knife itself, or the blade itself. So you're locked into place really, really well here. That kind of goes off of the ergonomics, and I think that's why people are saying this is like an awesomely ergonomic blade. I mean, it's good. It's just not great in my opinion. We got a lanyard hole that is emphasized with the pocket clip. It is what it is, but it's small. I haven't taken it apart, but I've taken apart the smock, which has the same size lanyard tube in there, and it's not a huge deal. Now, when you're taking apart, say, the PM3 or the Manix 2, or the PM2 or the Manix 2, those things are a pain in the ass. This lanyard hole is a mofo to get out. Once you learn some tricks and you're used to taking it apart, it becomes easier, but that's where we're at there. So, speaking of the weight of the knife, no, I mean, there was no segue there. That was a bad one. All right, the weight of the knife is coming in at 3.97 ounces, which isn't too bad considering that you have a, let's see how long the length of this blade is. That was a decent segue. Good job. So the length of this blade is coming in at just about 3.5 inches. The cutting edge is just about the same, so it's pretty sweet. Overall length of this whole blade is coming in at about 8.25. The handle length is coming in at about 4 3/4 inches. Let us get you guys some of the blade stock. Blade stock thickness is coming in at 120 thousandths, so starting off relatively narrow. The 120 thousandths, as advertised, is carried down to the tip, and I'm just measuring this just for my own sanity here. The tip, just the tip. Oh, I've never done this before, so bear with me. The tip about 1/4 inch out. Yeah, this is harder than it looks. Too much coffee this morning, jeez. So the tip is coming in at about 25 thousandths, and that's about 1/8 inch back from the tip. So here's your swordfish. Let's see how robust this actually is, despite what they claim to be. The tip of the swordfish is coming in a little bit thicker. I'm probably a little bit further back. The tip of the swordfish is about the same at the same position. So that's what frustrates me. They're like, I carried the length of the, the length of the spine, or the width of the spine, all the way down to the tip. No, you didn't. You carried it down to where there's about 1/4 inch out, and then it really starts to fine in, which is what you expect out of a tip, but it comes to a super fine edge because they carry this hollow grind all the way down towards the tip. So the whole length of this hollow grind, where the hollow grind's really hitting this tip, is just, that tip is going to break off. I'm sorry. I don't think that tip is as robust as they're saying it is. Let's see here. Let's check the width of your scales. Width of your scales is pretty narrow, coming in at 0.43 inches, or 430 thousandths. That's pretty darn good. And the overall height of this blade, at its maximum height that I can see visually, is coming in at 1.66, which is just about the same height as the PM3, and it's slightly smaller than the PM2, slightly larger than the, or slightly smaller than the Manix 2, slightly larger than the PM2. One thing I actually like about this, which means absolutely nothing, I kind of like the egg shape that it looks like when it's closed. That is something about that. I'm like, that looks really cool. Anyways, let's get you guys some size comparisons. Here is your Bestech Swordfish. Dirty, because you can see it gets used. I love that Bestech Swordfish. Here is your mini Feldspar. Obviously, the Bestech Swordfish is coming in much longer. The mini Feldspar is coming in at much shorter than the Spyderco Canis. Here's your Civivi Darus. Here is your Civivi Brigand. In rub brass and in Damascus, because it's gorgeous. She's gorgeous. So the Brigand is slightly shorter. The Darus is much shorter. I would say the Brigand's probably shorter by about 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch. The Doris is about shorter, probably about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. Here's the Spyderco Brethren. Here's your Manix 2. Here's your PM3. And for the sake, I wasn't planning on doing this, so bear with me for a second. For the sake of doing a Spyderco showdown on size, here is your Spyderco Smock. Here is your, you guys can see the Smock. Let's take out the Manix 2. Here is your Spyderco Shaman. And last but not least, here is your Spyderco Tenacious. So these are all just the Spyderco family of knives, just kind of showing you. The Canis is probably, short of the Shaman, a little bit longer than most of them. I don't have the PM2 anymore. I got rid of that. I never thought that I would use it again, and I would rather use other size comparisons than the PM2. I feel like people are a little bit more familiar with the PM3 than the PM2 in hand, because it's just a more usable knife. I could be wrong. I know the PM2 is probably more popular since back in the day, but rambling at this point. What the hell? Hold on. Get out there. See what happens when you deviate from your normal process? Everything gets all screwed up. And then last but not least, let's compare it to the Rat Model 1 and the Rat Model 2. As you can see, it's about the same size as your Rat Model 1, much larger than your Rat Model 2. So what are my overall thoughts? And let's check the notes, make sure I didn't miss anything on this guy. My overall thoughts on this knife. Yep, hit everything. Ergonomic-wise, like I said, I'm giving it an 8. I don't think it's the best thing since sliced bread, but I also think that it deserves praise, just not as much as people are saying, oh, it's the best thing. Nah, it's okay. The blade shape. I freaking love this blade shape. It is just so... Even though I don't think of knives as a weapon, it's just so dangerous looking, but I've used the tip, and the way that this Wharncliffe is so aggressive, getting that tip in there and doing fine work with that is actually really, really easy. I really, really appreciate that. The action on this guy gets better and better with each use. And I know break-in period, blah, 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 but when I first opened it, I wasn't super impressed. But now it's like, it's growing on me a little bit. I didn't like the scales. That's another thing that's growing on me. I didn't like these scales, but I'm coming to appreciate it. And at first they felt cheap, and they still kind of have this cheap feel, but at the same time they feel like quality. It's weird. It's like a weird quality / cheap feel that I can't really explain. But my dislikes, you know, I really don't have any. It just doesn't speak to me as well as other knives. The ergonomics, I think I actually have on my notes the dislikes are the ergonomics, and I don't dislike the ergonomics. I just dislike how much we talk them up. For $192, can I recommend this knife? Sure. If this is what you want. If you like the really aggressive looking Wharncliffe and you love Spydercos, then you're going to love this knife. Absolutely. Most Spydercos don't come in a Warney style, so this kind of fits that bill, right? For the everyday guy looking at this saying it looks cool, I mean, that's what I did. I bought it and I'm like, I'm dying. I'm so excited to get this in hand. Then you guys saw my unboxing and I'm like, I'm not that impressed. I can't, if you're buying it for the Wharncliffe, yes. Any other reason, I have to say no. I just don't appreciate it as much as I do any other Spyderco up to this point. And actually, Wharncliffe style, I put my smock away. I like the smock style better than I like this. The smock does have a much more dainty tip. Keep that in mind. So if you're looking for, I guess, a more robust tip, despite me going off on the tip, it's more robust than the smock. But is this a forever knife? As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, if you guys can't tell, no, I'm going to be flipping this knife. It's just not a knife for me. It's not a knife that I can see me keeping and appreciating like somebody else would appreciate it. But it's a great knife. It's a decent value. And, you know, it does the job. And what I didn't show you guys, let's get out a little bit of cardboard here and show you guys how slicey this guy really, I got too large of a piece of cardboard. This is going to be kind of difficult. Let's fold this. Like, this Wharncliffe Narrow, it's just stupid slicey. This is a stupid slicey blade. It's, in my opinion, now that I'm thinking about it with the sliciness, the Spyderco Smock and this should be compared based on the shape of the blade, right? They're both kind of Warnies and they kind of fit that bill. This is a better version of a Warnie for a harder use than the Spyderco Smock. That's a nicer way to put it. This is a harder use Spyderco Smock blade shape. So if you need a hard use Wharncliffe style and you like the Smock, you'll probably really like this, despite the fact that you probably like the Smock for the fidget factor. Let's be real. Rambling at this point, but my name is Tyler. This has been Everyday EDC. This is a Spyderco Canis, whatever you want to call it. Have a great day, guys.